For years, he's been prevented from entering the United States due to allegations of corruption. So why was Nigerian presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar in Washington last month? A closer look at Flare, Kenya's Uber for ambulances, and a portable ultrasound device that could have a major impact on health facilities in remote parts of Africa. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. A long overdue and much anticipated peace deal has finally been signed on Tuesday between the Central African Republic and 14 armed groups. The deal follows 2 weeks of talks in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum. The agreement was announced on Saturday by the African Union, but the terms were not immediately released. But a lasting peace is not guaranteed because similar agreements in 2014, 2015 and 2017 all collapsed. CAR has been plagued by violence since 2013 when mainly Muslim Seleka rebels ousted then-President Francois Bozizé, prompting reprisals from mostly Christian militia. Thousands of people have died during the unrest and 1/5 of the nation's 4.5 million people fled their homes. A 12,000-member United Nations peacekeeping mission deployed since 2014 has struggled to restore order in the countryside where the government has little or no control and attacks on civilians are frequent. Over a dozen peacekeepers were killed by rebels in 2017. Nigerian presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar visited Washington 2 weeks ago to meet with top U.S. diplomats and lawmakers thanks to a temporary suspension of a travel ban linked to a decade-old bribery scandal, according to people familiar with the matter. Journalist Andy Sullivan reports.
For years, he's been prevented from entering the United States due to allegations of corruption. So why was this Nigerian presidential candidate at the Trump International Hotel last month? I'm Andy Sullivan in Washington, which recently played host to a whirlwind visit by Atiku Abubakar, a leading challenger in the upcoming Nigerian election. He met with top U.S. diplomats and lawmakers and held a rally here at the Trump International Hotel. His supporters are seeing it as a major triumph. They say the fact that Atiku was allowed into the United States at all is proof that these long-standing allegations of corruption against him have no merit whatsoever. Now, multiple sources tell us that's not actually the case. They say Atiku was only allowed into the country on a temporary basis because it would be seen as meddling in the Nigerian election if the United States kept him out of the country. That factor apparently outweighing any concerns about his checkered past. Atiku is challenging Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari in the February 16th election. Atiku says he'd boost the economy and encourage foreign investment.
As a policy, we want to have less, government involvement as far as business is concerned.
But some Nigerians question whether he's the best choice in a country where graft is a major problem. Atiku was a central figure in the corruption trial of former U.S. Congressman William Jefferson, who was found guilty in 2009 for soliciting bribes to expand a tech company in Nigeria. The FBI found $90,000 in Jefferson's freezer, that money allegedly earmarked for Atiku. Atiku does not face criminal charges in the United States. His spokesman said the allegations have already been addressed and declined further comment. Like a parade of other foreign leaders, Atiku stayed here at the Trump International Hotel, and that raises red flags for ethics experts who say it's a way for foreign leaders to curry favor with the president and may violate an anti-corruption clause in the U.S. Constitution. I spoke with several of Atiku's supporters who helped arrange the trip. They say that they didn't pick the Trump Hotel because they are trying to curry favor with the president, but rather because they got a good rate at the last minute.
Well, that was Reuters correspondent Andy Sullivan. Having a centralized dispatcher for ambulance services is taken for granted in many countries, but not in Kenya, where a ride-hailing service for first responders played a major role saving lives during last month's hotel attack. Journalist Matthew Larotonda has the story.
I was scared, but deep inside, I knew that my presence there would save people. Me arriving there with the ambulance I knew that I'll make a great change in rescuing people from that area.
Kevin Mangy was one of the paramedics that responded to last month's devastating hotel attack in Nairobi. 21 people were killed in the 20-hour siege, but of the 30 people badly wounded, only 2 died, partly thanks to a subscription phone service.
Hello, you've reached rescue. What is the location of your emergency?
The service is called Flare, and it's being compared to Uber for ambulances. See, in some countries, a centralized dispatcher for first responders is taken for granted. Not so in Kenya. So, for a fee of $24 a year, subscribers are given a hotline to call when they need medical help.
Juliet Alpha Mike, heavy.
Flare finds the ambulance that can respond fastest, like a regular dispatch center, regardless of the city's many different ambulance companies, as well as which hospital can best take them. During the hotel attack, the first Flare ambulance arrived in 12 minutes. Within an hour, 20 were there. The service is run by a tech startup called Rescue.co. Maria Rabinovich, an American expat, is one of the founders.
Everybody's feedback in Kenya was like, you'll never get fast response. Have you seen Nairobi traffic? What you get from having location data of the responders in real time, as well as information about traffic from things like the Google API, you actually can send the right responder, even if they're not technically the closest one. They're the ones with the closest ETA.
Flare was so effective during the attack that Nairobi police were feeding it information directly, and the Australian embassy let them use its property as a staging area.
Reuters correspondent Matthew Larutunda reporting there. Now, there are growing signs that the uncertainty over Britain's exit from the European Union is starting to hit investment as Japanese car giant Nissan announced it is moving production out of Britain. 1/3 of British businesses could move operations abroad because of Brexit, according to a recent survey. Meanwhile, government contingency plans could see the British Queen evacuated from Buckingham Palace if Britain crashes out of the EU with no deal. Here's Henry Ridgewell in London.
For decades, Britain has been used as a gateway to Europe by Japanese firms. Nissan's decision to move production of its X-Trail SUV back to Japan has been met with dismay.
It concerns me that they have noted the uncertainty around Brexit, and I think that is a serious signal to all of us in Parliament that now is the time to resolve that uncertainty.
As Britain's ties stumble, Japan and the European Union are celebrating a trade deal that will cover 1/3 of global GDP. Visiting Tokyo Monday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said a Brexit deal was still possible.
But we need to know from Britain, and this is the critical point, what it envisages.
The threat of a no-deal Brexit is growing starker by the day. Government contingency plans leaked to British media purportedly entail evacuating the royal family from Buckingham Palace. Worst-case scenarios include rioting on the streets amid food and medicine shortages as waste export restrictions create mountains of garbage.
Obviously, it's a very complicated scenario. Which entails incredible implications for citizens, for businesses on both sides of the channel. But the other options is to rethink the withdrawal agreement, but not entirely. It's just about arranging the process that might lead the withdrawal agreement to finally find a majority in the houses.
That might not be enough. Britain is demanding changes to the so-called Irish backstop, which seeks to keep Britain tied to EU rules until a trade deal is in place, aimed at preventing a hard border between the Irish Republic and Northern Ireland, which will become the EU's external border.
They won't give us a time-limited backstop because, as the Irish keep saying, if it's time-limited, it's not a backstop.
Reopening the withdrawal agreement could see other EU member states request their own changes, notably Spain's demands for talks on the sovereignty of Gibraltar.
Some member states could have some possible claims. Certainly Spain might be one of them. But also the political context in Europe is also moving and very fast ahead of the next European elections.
A reminder that the current deadlock is just the beginning of Britain's recasting its relationship with a changing Europe, a process that could take years, if not decades. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
Well, Pope Francis is returning to the Vatican after making an historic visit to the United Arab Emirates, where he celebrated Mass in Abu Dhabi before leaving on Tuesday. The pontiff spoke before an estimated 135,000 people at Zayed Sports City Stadium in what some consider the largest show of public Christian worship on the Arabian Peninsula on Monday. The Pope called for an end to wars in the Middle East, particularly conflicts in Yemen, Syria, Iraq and Libya, as he spoke at an interfaith meeting.
In the name of God, the Creator, therefore, every form of violence must be condemned without hesitation, because we gravely profound God's name when we use it to justify hatred and violence against a brother. No violence can be justified in the name of religion. Nobody has to exploit religions that incite hatred, violence, extremism, and blind fanatism, or use the name of God to justify acts of homicide, exile, terrorism, and oppression.
Well, the United Arab Emirates is a key part of a Saudi-led coalition that has been fighting in Yemen in support of the country's president since 2015. But it has been criticized by rights groups for killing civilians with airstrikes. The Catholic Church believes there are as many as 1 million Catholics in the UAE, mostly workers from the Philippines and India, who sought employment in the Emirates. Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Still ahead on Africa 54, a mobile ultrasound cuts the cost of life-saving cancer scans. But first, a look at Tuesday's headlines.
In Burkina Faso, leaders of 5 nations that have joined forces to fight jihadism in the Sahel meet for a summit following a terror attack in the region that claimed 14 lives. In Ivory Coast, hundreds of women have taken to the streets of Abidjan to protest a decision by the International Criminal Court to free former President Laurent Gbagbo. In South Africa, at the Invest in African Mining in Daba in Cape Town, Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo calls for more collaboration between mining companies and governments across the continent to, quote, make Africa prosperous. In Nigeria, young musicians who were chosen in a highly selective application process work with award-winning producers to perform songs about democracy and political participation in advance of elections on February 16.
Well, it's time for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with the latest information on cancer. Hey, Lino.
Thank you, Vince. And World Cancer Day was commemorated Monday with the theme, I Am and I Will. The yearly event is an initiative of the Union for International Cancer Control. Get this, 9.6 million people die each year of cancer. Cancer is the second leading cause of death worldwide. 70% of deaths occur in low to middle-income nations, and 1/3 of common cancers are preventable. Joining me now live via Skype from Geneva, Switzerland for more is Dr. Kerry Adams, Chief Executive Officer of the Union for International Cancer Control, a leading organization in the global fight against cancer. Dr. Adams, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
The theme this year was I Am and I Will, urging for personal commitment. What type of commitment is being encouraged?
Well, that very much depends on the individual. I mean, the theme is being crafted to be usable by anyone. I mean, for example, I am a father, and I will encourage my children to lead healthy lives. I'm a CEO of a cancer organization, and I will encourage my employees to live healthy lives, to encourage their children not to smoke and things like that. So it depends who you are. It could even be a country or a city. So it's a very flexible way of getting people to not just engage in the day itself, but also say what they will do, what action they will take. And that's been a theme that we've seen right around the world in the last 24 hours. Individuals, companies, governments making commitments to do something to help cancer control.
Cancer has been around for many, many years. There have been a lot of progress in terms of research. However, many challenges remain. What are some of the most urgent issues in the current global fight against cancer?
Yeah, I often get asked the question, is there a cure for cancer? But of course, we've made great progress over the last 40 to 50 years. I mean, take, for example, cervical cancer. Cervical cancer is a disease which is caused by a virus, human papillomavirus. There are vaccinations available for young girls to have, which actually prevent them from having cervical cancer. It can be detected early and it can be treated successfully. The same with breast cancer. If it's detected early, we have all the necessary drugs, medicines, and we have the technologies to actually treat breast cancer successfully. The challenge we face as a community is, although we have made advances, many people still present too late, i.e. when the cancer is too advanced, for those treatments to work effectively. And unfortunately, in many low and middle-income countries, we do have a lack of treatment facilities per se. So there's not enough radiotherapy, the available medicines are not sufficient to actually cope with the demand. So there's lots that we can do. We've made great advances, but we have the challenge of early presentation and at the same time making treatment and care more available to populations around the world.
So how is the UICC, your organization, spearheading this global fight against cancer? What type of impact have you seen over the years?
Well, the last 24 hours, we've had, hopefully, been raising the discussion about cancer globally in the media. The fact that I'm talking to you now is a great step in the right direction, that people are talking about cancer in a more open way, which is reducing the myths and misconceptions about it. But from an organization which is based in Geneva, our role is to work with the World Health Organization and other United Nations agencies to make sure that they put cancer on the global health and development agenda. And in 2017, we were able to secure a cancer resolution, which is a commitment by all countries around the world to put cancer as a health agenda in their own health budgets, in their own health plans. So the challenge we face now is to make sure that every country has a national cancer control plan which is funded and can deliver the change that's required in that specific country.
So, Dr. Adams, before we wrap, what do you hope to see moving forward, of course, besides a cure for cancer?
Well, it would be lovely if there was a cure for cancer. It's a highly complex set of diseases, and I think cure for cancer is something that well beyond my lifetime. However, we know so much today which we can do today to reduce the incidence and also to improve survival. So a simple thing that I would love to see around the world is countries adopt tobacco control as a major part of their initiative to improve the health of their community. We are seeing tobacco companies moving out of developed countries, and they are targeting low and middle income countries today. And if that happens and it grows at the rate that's predicted, then we unfortunately will face another generation of an incredible amount of cancer. And I don't think that's the right thing that we should be facing.
And tobacco and cancer, definitely another discussion that is a must. Dr. Adams, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And that was Dr. Kerry Adams. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Union for International Cancer Control. Now, as we've mentioned, cancer remains one of the world's leading causes of death. Last year, there were nearly 2 million new cases of cancer worldwide, and more than 600,000 people died of the disease. But progress is being made. Cancer mortality rates have been going down for decades, and new technology is making early detection easier. VOA's Kevin Egnox reports.
Although cancer remains one of the world's leading causes of death, diagnosing it early greatly increases the chances of survival. In areas without well-trained pathologists, catching the disease early can be difficult. This new device, called Tiny, now being tested in Uganda, could change that.
When someone comes to us with the skin showing possible signs of the cancer, we take off a tissue and take out DNA and then put it in this device and see if we can grow more of that viral DNA. And that's how we tell how much, whether or not you have it.
TINY is short for Tiny Isothermal Nucleic Acid Quantification System, and what it does is detect cancerous tissue in as little as 2 hours instead of days.
Now, for the standard pathology, depending on where you go, in a private setting, you could even have a result in 3 or 4 days, or sometimes when you expedite the process, if in case you have an emergency, it could give you 3 or 5 days, but on occasion, most of our patients take between 10 to 14 days.
The device also makes diagnosis virtually error-free.
Given the TINY method eliminating most of these steps that are prone to error, then I'm looking at TINY giving us a margin of about 1%.
Right now, TINY is being tested as a simple way to detect a common form of cancer called Kaposi's sarcoma. But according to researchers, that's just the start.
I think this device is applied all over. It can be applied all over. If you have DNA in a cell, and that cell is cancerous, you could be able to use TINY.
Researchers believe TINY may be available commercially in as few as 5 years. Kevin Enochs, VOA News.
And that's today's health report. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Vincent, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Lenore. I'll be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health report every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to praise the U.S. economy and insist on the need for a physical barrier on the U.S. border with Mexico in Tuesday night's State of the Union address. President Trump's address was originally scheduled for January 29th, but was postponed due to the longest ever U.S. government shutdown caused by the rift between Trump and the Democratic majority in Congress over the funding for the border wall. A debate on the Senate floor Monday revealed clues as to what can be expected from Trump's speech. VOA's Zlati Sahok reports.
Trump is expected to present himself as a strong leader who is delivering on his campaign promises. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell gave a hint that the success of the U.S. economy could be foremost.
Republicans' pro-growth, pro-family economic policies have helped our nation's job creators and small businesses hit the accelerator, and middle-class families across the country continue to reap the rewards.
The Democrats are prepared to respond, as demonstrated by Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Tomorrow, the president will say predictably that the state of our union is strong. But the truth is, the state of the Trump economy is failing America's middle class. The state of the Trump health care system is failing American families. And the state of the Trump administration is embroiled in chaos and incompetence.
Trump has acknowledged that he may not be able to get enough congressional support to finance construction of a border wall, his other major campaign promise. He has said he may declare a national emergency to get the necessary funds and could use the State of the Union to push for that option. Senator Lindsey Graham has urged fellow Republicans to support him.
If the Democrats won't work with him, I think it would be bad for the Republicans to undercut him if he tries to put the barriers in place using his power as commander-in-chief.
Trump is also likely to declare success in U.S. mediation in Afghanistan as a justification to end the 17-year-long U.S. engagement there. Rand Paul, a Republican senator from Kentucky, is also a passionate supporter of the withdrawal of U.S. troops from both Syria and Afghanistan.
By any measurement, we are victorious. We killed bin Laden. We have disrupted the terror camps in Afghanistan. Is Afghanistan a mess? Sure, it's a mess. It's always been a mess and always will be a mess.
But some lawmakers on both sides of the aisle oppose the withdrawal.
One of our colleagues, the senator from Florida, Senator Rubio, said, really, terrorism is like a tumor. It's like a cancer. And you can try to eliminate it, but if you're unsuccessful in eliminating it, even though you've shrunk it, it will come back as soon as you remove the pressure.
Trump also is expected to claim progress in his administration's trade negotiations with China and talks with North Korea on denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Zlarica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
The lieutenant governor in the state of Virginia, Justin Fairfax, is continuing to deny sexual misconduct allegations. The claims were first reported by a conservative website. Speaking in the state capital, Richmond, on Monday, Fairfax called it a smear and said a 204 encounter with a woman was consensual. The Washington Post newspaper knew about the woman but could not corroborate her claim. Fairfax denied it, and the Post was unable to find other allegations against him.
I mean, you have someone who obviously wanted to manipulate the press, obviously wanted attention on this, and was willing to, again, lay low for a year with the Post initially would not run the story, and then magically resurface right as we're getting attention and media exposure around this issue again. So it is completely obvious that you don't have to be a political genius to understand that this is a complete smear.
Well, Fairfax is next in line to become Virginia's next governor if the current governor, Ralph Northam, resigns. He has been under pressure to resign since a racist photo from his page in his 1984 medical school yearbook surfaced. Well, here's what's trending, and even supermarket cards have gone smart. Created by TrackPoint, a northern Israel-based company, the cart tabulates items as they are deposited into the basket and charges customers as they walk out of the store. The company claims that while it has received a boost in interest following the opening of Amazon's cashierless Go stores, its innovation centering technology in the cart removes the need for the extensive sensors and ceiling cameras found in Amazon Go shops. But a big unanswered question is how the company will field privacy concerns about its technology, given the wealth of personal and behavioral data it is collecting about its users. Well, and finally, menswear designers debuted their fall-winter 2019 collections at New York Fashion Week. Men's on Monday. New York brand Descendant of Thieves is hoping to send a message of love with its new line. The co-founder says the message is love thy neighbor, but don't dress like him. Spanish fashion house Paloma, Spain, presented a genderless line inspired by classical ballet and the rural Spain of the early 20th century, featuring historical references with a modern flair. The brand has stayed true to its mission of giving men the freedom of being fabulous, and that's what's trending today. And that's our show for today. Have a good night.